Yes, it is Friday. The time is 3 o'clock, and we are live on Moth News Live. And what a 24 hours it's been! It's been quite a week between Conor McGregor, the White House, his demands, I suppose, acting the clown on the world stage and misrepresenting us. We had a good old chat on Moth News yesterday. Me and three men. It wasn't, if you want something sorted out, get four men on a podcast, give four men microphones, and they'll sort it out. That's the way to sort things out. I really can't wait till women take over the running of things, to be honest with you, because we're making an absolute hames of it. Now, that was yesterday, and I thought today's show would be mostly about Conor McGregor, and we will touch on it a little bit. Also, we have a few guests on, and Philip will be with us as well. But something happened late yesterday evening, and I don't know if you know this content creator. First of all, let me just talk about him a little bit. He's a good guy. I don't have any issues with him. There is no problems. This guy has not been cancelled. He was just online. He said something that some people took issue with. It's just his opinion. I would have a different opinion to him, and that's okay. I would never abuse the guy. And I think what happened was when he posted the video and he saw the reaction, he rightly so, because you do what you got to do, whatever's right for you. He just paused his account. So everybody was like, well, what's happened? He's been cancelled. As far as I've been in touch with people that work with him and know him, and as far as they're telling me, he hasn't been cancelled. We have asked him, to come on through people, if he'd come on and chat to us. But look, he hasn't been cancelled. As far as I know, he's okay. It's just one of those things. And I've been there. I've been there where I've posted stuff and then I've gone, oh, okay. I didn't really realize what I said kind of meant in a way, or it could be construed in a certain way. And these things happen, and then people react. The issue with this is, and I think that he's coming from a good place. And I think that what he's well-meaning. And I think I might have called him Gareth, but his name is Garron. But so that's all. It's all good. It's just that the problem now is there are sort of far right-wing elements using this as an example of, look, he's right. Yes, this is what we've been saying all along. Fair play to you. And that is an issue, because if you have a big following, as Garron does, then people are going to see what you say and believe the sort of the more extreme versions of a story, and that can be an issue. So I'll just play this clip, and we'll watch the clip all the way through to give the man his fair dues. This is not a clipped up clip. This is the full thing. Let's just play. This is Garron Noonan, or I'm Delicious, as he calls
So Conor
himself.
McGregor was in the White House the other day. I have been inundated with messages to talk about this. Now, I get asked for my opinion on these kind of serious topics all the time. I don't know why the fuck people care, because I just shouted cups of tea on the internet. Now, the reason that I prefer not to make videos about this sort of shit is because I don't think it's fucking useful. The entire story of the world is being told in poorly researched headlines and 40-second fucking TikTok clips, and it is making people fucking nuts. For me to talk about this in a way that's even approaching being useful, I need to spend 25 minutes talking about Conor McGregor the person. I need to spend 40 minutes talking about immigration in Ireland. I need to spend 40 minutes talking about the fucking economy in Ireland. I need to spend an hour and a half talking about our fucking government. Now, my opinion on Conor McGregor is irrelevant, but I don't think he's a good person. I don't think it's particularly hard to find evidence of that. But it doesn't surprise me in the least to see a lot of people agreeing with what he was saying. There absolutely is an immigration issue in Ireland. That doesn't mean that people feel like we shouldn't take the refugees that we're able to take. It doesn't mean that people feel like people shouldn't be able to come here for better opportunities. But the systems that we have in place are being taken advantage of. And that is plain to see. And the government continually does not allow people to express their concerns about that. Along with this, Ireland continues to become one of the richest countries in the world, while most people's quality of life is going down. Our towns, and especially our cities, are becoming much less safe. Now, that's not just because of immigration. There's a lot of factors to that. But if you can't see that that's happening, then you have not left your house. Communities all over Ireland are concerned, and their concerns are continuously not being heard. And when you continuously suppress what people are feeling, you turn them towards more extreme beliefs, you increase their distrust in the government, and you push people towards racism and extremism. Now, no doubt, a lot of people in the comments are going to completely misconstrue what I've said here, but that's the internet for you. Anyway, stay delicious.
Yeah, so that's Garron there. And yeah, so I mean, like what he's saying is absolutely fine. The issue I would have is that if you look at that video, even though he's not, even though he's trying not to, he's associating the story of asylum seekers and immigrants with more violence on our streets not being safe, etc. Even though he says, I'm not saying that's just because, but it's you just have to be really careful. And I think that the problem is, okay, and he said it at the start, I don't usually, weigh in on these things, and people ask my opinion and, why. Funnily enough, actually, it's a great sign of Ireland because most of what we used to have had a problem with that was the expletives, and we were all grand with that. The He doesn't usually comment, and he's asked to comment. If you comment on a divisive issue like this and you have a following, there's going to be backlash. You're going to have issues. I posted something, my thoughts on that video, and I've gotten backlash. That's how it works. If you've got a following at all, it doesn't matter. And it did seem a little bit like, I mean, I would like to see the facts. I don't like rhetoric, or I don't like, the streets aren't safe or anything. I don't know. I walk the streets all the time. I will go to Dublin and I will walk Conor Street and I'll get the Lewis, and I don't see it. Like, streets have always been dangerous at times. That's life. That's the world. It's not Dublin, Ireland. It's a nice place to live. There's bad elements everywhere. There's criminals. So I don't agree that our streets aren't safer. The government could definitely support An Garda Síochána more, with more money, with more people. They're paying them less. That There's a feeling of there being less Gardaí around. There's a feeling within the Gardaí that they're not being supported. So, there's an apathy there. But you've got to separate all these issues. And you've got to be very careful when you're talking about immigration and what Conor McGregor says, and then saying lots of people agree with them. Because what Conor McGregor was saying was completely coming from a fascist point of view. And I don't use that word lightly. But what he was saying was fascism, and that's far right. So if you're saying, I don't like Conor McGregor, fine, but I understand why people, it's very difficult then you've got to be very careful what you say next. Yes, I can see. And what's he saying? He's saying, look, the government aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So even as I'm saying this, I'm going, yeah, okay. But it's taken me probably 12 hours, 14 hours to digest this, to think about what he said. And in the meantime, there are fascist right-wing elements, far right-wing elements in Ireland posting this as a kind of see, we told you, and thank you very much. And that's bad for him, because that's not what he intended. The other thing I'll say is, look, I've been there. I've been the bad guy. I've had people, threaten me. I've gotten abuse when I thought I was saying something good. Other times I got abuse from when I was saying something good from the far right, or, it's okay. It is what it is. The fact that you've got a load of followers is not a reason to be, hugely happy. But the fact that you're getting a bit of abuse online, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It moves on. Life moves on. It is what it is. It's just a sort of I'm glad what he did was take down his account and take a break. That's probably the right thing to do. Some people would say it would have been nice if he came on again just to clarify a few issues, and maybe he will. But I think for now, if that's what's right for him, that's what he should have done. I'm hoping to have a guest on later to talk about this idea of anchoring. And anchoring is like where it's like if you think of othering, where you look at a group of people and you you said they're different to us because, and then you can blame them for certain things. And we used to do it with the traveling community in Ireland, and now we're doing it with immigrants. But anchoring then is like showing isolated incidents where somebody from a certain grouping, a criminal from a certain grouping, has done something, and there's a video of it, and you share that, and you go, look how bad it is. And these things get a lot of traction, but so you're anchoring some certain incidents onto a grouping and making them look bad, and that's what happens. And we're going to be talking about that. The other thing is we really just need to be focused here, right? A crime is a crime. A criminal is a criminal. If somebody does something bad, they need to be prosecuted, and that's what we need to focus on. That's all we need to think about. It doesn't matter where they're from. It doesn't matter whether they arrived last week. It doesn't matter whether they're here on a stag party from Barcelona and they've done something, they've committed a crime. They need to be, like, there needs to be consequences. So it's not helpful to talk about these people are committing crime. Well, there's loads of people committing crimes, and that's bad. But you'll get that, and that's life. But we need to understand that the problems in our country, they're not down to the very sort of small percentage of criminals that are coming in looking for asylum. They're down to the way the country's been run. They're down to our government. They're down to our systems. And all these things need to be separated, and we need to focus on them. And we need to talk about our government and to our government, and we need to talk to our local TDs. And that's how we'll get change. But it won't change if we keep voting in Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. So we have to take some responsibility for that as well. That's my 2 cents. We will talk about it a little bit more. I do have some stuff on Conor McGregor, but it just doesn't seem too relevant anymore, to be honest with you. Look, I'll read the news in brief. So we know Conor McGregor, he issued a 12-day ultimatum to the Irish government demanding a clear immigration reform plan. Why is he bothering with immigrant? Like, he's threatening anyway if they don't comply that Donald Trump is going to force action. So America are going to force Ireland to bring in some laws about immigration. No, that's absolutely ridiculous. He's also gone on a rant about government elite deflection tactics. Now, what he's doing here, so Conor McGregor is in trouble because, I mean, he talks about, criminals in Ireland and the streets not being safe. Well, Conor, like, if you're a UFC fighter and you're going around punching old men in the face in pubs, and that's on video and it's been seen, and he did have to atone for that particular crime. Or if you're out sexually abusing women, and there was a civil case taken against you, and you did have to pay out a large sum of money because that court found you guilty of doing that. So if you're a white man and you're Irish and you're going out committing crimes, yeah, the streets aren't safer. What are you going to do about it? Stop committing crimes. That's all you need to worry about. You worry about yourself. And if everybody worried about themselves and tried to behave themselves as better citizens, this country will be a lot better off. So to be going on this rant and talking about, at least deflective, what you're doing, you've got these cases coming down the line, people don't like it, whatever. And it's a classic sort of a playbook scenario here where you're going, at some stage, they're going to take me down. And when they take me down, it's because I spoke out. No, it's because you committed some crimes, and that's why you'd be taken down. So it's not as clever as you think it is. So I would just say, maybe give it a rest. And he is also seeking to overturn some rulings with that case of Nikita Hand from what happened in 2018. You can read those headlines in any of the papers. Yeah, I want to move on to our guest. So I hope that we have Peter Geoghegan there. No, Peter. No, Peter. Let me just check my email and see. We will. Oh, he can't seem to see a link. Okay, let me just send him a link. Philip, are you there, Philip?
Afternoon to you, Keith. How are you keeping?
Good, Philip. I'm just trying to get this man, Peter. He can't find the link. So, I mean, you wouldn't see Brian Dobson on RT having to deal with, like, resending the link to the guest, would you?
Look, we have a fantastic team working here on Moth News, but this is live on internet TV here. These things happen. I think it adds to the excitement, and you're doing a fantastic job there, Keith, especially keeping all these balls in the air and none of them visible here online.
I think all of my balls are visible.
Shriveling away here as we talk about Conor McGregor and Garron Noonan.
My not so chocolatey and salty balls. So before I'm gonna try and get Peter on, I will send him the link. But what are your thoughts on, say, initially the Garron Noonan situation? Let's just have your thoughts on that straight away.
I think the first thing we should speak about is that this is probably a very, very difficult day, or very, very difficult 2 days for Garron Noonan, because let's remember now that his Instagram comments and his Facebook comments and TikTok comments, there's going to be a flood of stuff coming in there, positive, negative, and he has to deal with that. And at the moment now, he's deactivated his accounts. That makes me worry for the chap's mental health. He has spoken before about agoraphobia, not wanting to leave the house and that kind of thing. And this is an enormous tidal wave of stuff that's coming at him. As he says himself, and this is what's, in one way, it's kind of odd. Like that 2-minute video that you play at the top of the show, Keith, is it's actually a perfect example of how these debates can go so badly wrong so quickly. So he begins by saying that I don't normally talk about this stuff because, you know, I don't feel that, you know, I know enough about it, and then goes ahead and does it anyway. And that to me was, you know, I would have loved to have seen a video where he comes on and goes, yeah, thanks very much. Loads of people ask me about Conor McGregor. I don't usually make videos about this stuff. Thanks for watching. And just leave it at that. Because if he'd done that, we wouldn't be in the situation today. And this is something I've written about and I've spoken about. I've been more than 20 years covering the rise of the far right in Scandinavia, in Ireland, in the UK, and in the USA, right? So an awful lot of what's happening now and what you see Garron doing, this is not one new mistake made by one internet comedian, right? This is a repeat of the kind of thing that happens absolutely everywhere as these things sort of seep into the discourse. And what I really feel for the chap about today is that, you know, what he did was entirely innocent. I don't think he's a bad fella. I don't think he's racist or anything else like that. I think that he's trying to make a point that got lost in the other stuff that he's consuming, right? So when you come out and you say that immigration systems are being abused, right? That's great. But tell me which ones, right? I'll tell you ones that I think are being abused is the people who own direct provision centers. I think they're doing a fairly good job of abusing the systems that we have for immigration and that kind of thing, you know? So I would have much liked to see, and people were sort of saying it was a great nuanced take and that kind of thing. And to be honest, it's hard to argue with him, Keith, because he's saying this is what people are thinking. And I would agree with that because there's an awful lot of this stuff put out there. But what I would vehemently disagree with is, you know, the government doesn't allow us to speak about this. We speak of nothing else. It's everywhere online. It's on News Talk. It's in the Independents, absolutely everywhere. Stop me as soon as Peter Geoghegan comes in because he's far more interesting than I am.
He's there.
Oh, let's get Peter Geoghegan in here. I can do this rant anytime. Get Peter Geoghegan in here. He's far more handsome as well.
He might have a take on this whole situation, I'm sure. Sure, come on in, Peter. Apologies, I may have misled you on the fact that there was a link in that email, and there might
no problem at all. I was struggling with that. It's a Friday. It's the end of the week, so my brain might be slightly frazzled.
Well, look, there could be a pair of us in it. Peter,
I'm glad my extra shirt arrived in time for you there, Peter.
Yeah, no, we're looking pretty, you know, I have to say.
So good to get Philip,
especially next to my screen. It's tough to tell us apart, Philip.
Good to get Philip's long lost brother on. Philip, how long? When did you find out about your brother? Peter, do you have a take on what we're talking about? This idea of so I know you're not based in Ireland, but so we had an internet. He's a TikTok star. He's a funny guy. He's actually a singer as well. He's a brilliant singer songwriter as well. Very entertaining fella. But he had a little chat about immigration, and he said, "I don't like Conor McGregor." And I don't like what he stands for, but I can see why people agree with what he's saying. And he kind of went on to talk about, you know, fear of safety in the streets and, you know, all these kinds of things. And it's sort like just didn't really like. The problem is what he said now has been used as far right elements online as going, look, this guy agrees with us. You know, I mean, do you have a take on that?
I must confess, now, I haven't been following this story massively closely, so I'm going to struggle with the specifics of the story. But
we
I guess
in general, just in a sort of your experience with this kind of thing, or the whole area, or whatever your reflections of Ireland at the moment are.
I think it's, you know, I'm from Longford, and whenever I go home, I think it's the extent to which this issue and the issue of immigration has been weaponized in Ireland. I think is really striking. Like when I go back to where I'm from, I think you can see it. We saw it in local elections, and what I'm really struck by is I think as well, there's a lot of people who aren't really sure about what the people they might be voting for stand for. So, for example, I use my own family. You know, our local independent MEP now is from Independent Ireland. And my mum voted for him, and I said to my mum, "Are you aware that these are the policies? And these are their policies in migration, etc." My mum was absolutely appalled and shocked and had no idea, because this person had a standing, was well known, was a former journalist, had been seen around. So I think there's an element of that too, which I think is like the extent to which what would have been very fringe discourses in Ireland have been mainstreamed in ways I think Conor McGregor is a really good example of. And actually, I think we probably haven't seen. We've seen elements in the manosphere here in the UK, but actually, what you saw in the UK in some ways, especially under the last Conservative government, was the Conservative government and Suella Braverman. You had the Home Secretary talking about invasions, which frankly even the Daily Mail wasn't talking about migrants. So it was almost the elite that were leading it, or a very political elite. What I'm really struck by in Ireland is that political elite is in a very different place to that. I think sometimes struggles to articulate anything around it for that reason. And it's almost a subcutaneous. It feels quite Steve Bannon-y in the idea of culture, of politics being downstream from culture. And a lot of this in Ireland seems to come out a lot more through culture than it comes out through politics. And that's, as I say, that's somebody who isn't based in Ireland. That's only my experience, kind of going in over and back.
Yeah, very interesting, and I think we spoke about it. We did a live yesterday, and we spoke about Conor McGregor going over there, and we were talking about the fact that we've got a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael conservative. I mean, we talk about conservative these days. I mean, like when you look back to so-called right-wing conservative governments, say in the UK, for instance, who are building like loads of social housing, and the tax rate for wealthy people was like what 80-something%. Like this is like extreme. They're not conservative anymore. Labour have gone so far that they're as bad. They're worse than what conservative used to be. Like things have shifted so far right that it's unrecognisable at the moment. But the problem now for Ireland, and we spoke about it yesterday, is like the two people that went to represent Ireland on the world stage in America were Micheál Martin, who isn't doing a great job in Ireland, and then we have Conor McGregor. Like, is this the best we can do?
I think it's really striking that as well. I thought McGregor in particular, like a lot of people say here in the UK, I think saw that and were slightly shocked. I think we're shocked to see, because he is convicted. He's convicted of sexual assault. Like this is a serious. This is somebody who would be beyond the pale. He's not an elected politician on any size, shape, or form, and he's going to the White House, which was traditionally the kind of Irish American, especially post-peace process, since the 90s, a kind of space for a kind of version of Irish America to kind of, strut its stuff. And I think it was really, really striking. And I think it shocked quite a few people who aren't familiar with some of the discourse in Ireland. You could look at the Irish general election and go, the right-wing candidates did not fare particularly well. There wasn't, immigration wasn't a huge hot issue, despite Elon Musk's kind of interventions beforehand. But actually, I think this kind of will definitely make some people stand up and go, actually, what's going on there? What's happening in Ireland? Like, why, who does this guy speak for? And to what extent is there a space for kind of electoral interference around someone like him as well?
Yeah, and I know.
Sorry, Keith, if I could just come in there, because Peter, you're making a very, very valid point there. And being something of an expert in finance, coming in from dark places to influence elections, I'd love to hear what you think about this, because we look at McGregor at the moment, and I was actually a friend of mine from Swedish television, from the public service broadcaster, was on to me earlier on today, and he wanted me to come to the studio and one of their morning programs and talk about this. And I started to go down through the list of TDs and senators, because if you want to get elected president, you have to have either 4 county councils or 20 members of the Oireachtas who nominate you. And I was thinking, okay, now you did mention there that the far right as such, in terms of parties and that kind of thing, didn't do very well in the general election. But I was kind of looking down through the usual suspects and going, okay, how many of these might actually give McGregor a nomination? Because we tend to think that he could do this, that this could be done on party political grounds, right? But nobody's bound by that. Somebody could take a flyer in Sinn Féin or Fine Gael or the Labour Party and say, okay, I'm going to give a vote to McGregor unless the party stops them. And then, of course, we have the people who are, more towards the fringes, the Matty McGraths of this world, who could do absolutely anything. But do you think that, what struck me the other day about McGregor in the White House was that he met Hegseth, he met Elon Musk. He, all of these pictures, I don't see this as being an accident. I think there was a sort of a photo bank being built up there for this thing of, look, here's me with Hegseth, here's me with Donald Trump, I am the next president, get behind me. Because I fear that these things can go very, very quickly from being utterly unthinkable, as it once was with Donald Trump in 2015, to being the reality we have to face. Do you see that as being a possibility?
I think it's, these are people who want to interfere in foreign elections. We have seen this. We saw this in Germany with the AfD. We've seen it in other spheres as well. These are people, we saw it here, we see it here in Britain with the potential for Elon Musk and reform and Nigel Farage. It's a long-running saga. These are people who do want to interfere in elections. I don't think Trump understands the Irish political system, unsurprisingly. So when he talks with the president, he thinks that's the person who can make decisions, which it isn't. And we know this, the president is a figure out. We do not want, I think it's fair to say, having Conor Conor, even having Conor McGregor as a serious contender in a presidential contest, even if he doesn't win, but also he is in the slipstream of discourses that in Ireland have kind of gone unchecked. We had, what's his name, Casey back in the day, who was incredibly anti-traveller and incredibly, it was very, very, was very much kind of tacking to the populist right, albeit probably a bit early. But no, I think there's a real, I think we should not underestimate the extent to which these people do want to influence agendas beyond their shores. I think they definitely do. And I don't think it's always about necessarily even winning electoral contests. It's about spreading this message. It's about spreading this kind of like worldview. And I think it's not, those kind of images, those kind of pictures of Trump and McGregor, of Hexet McGregor, of all that is no completely. It's him setting himself up. It's quite clear as well. I don't spend a lot of time looking at his Twitter feed, but he doesn't write his Twitter feed, I don't think. I don't think he talks about things like redress, which is not words I often would, listening to Conor McGregor speak, he doesn't talk about it a lot. So clearly he's got other people around him.
Yeah, it's true. Before I let you go as well, because thank you very much for coming up. I know you've got a hard out, as they call it in the industry.
My apologies.
Oh no, it's fine. You don't like us, that's fine.
I will come back. I will happily come back.
He has to send the shirt back to me. I need it back on Monday.
I know. Maybe I'll wear a different shirt next time.
But we do talk a lot on this broadcast about journalism and how journalism is not doing its job at the moment, and we're very hard on journalists, and it's like, why aren't they investigating? Why isn't there, like, especially in Ireland, why aren't the broadsheets, the mainstream media, why aren't they doing more about the housing crisis? Why aren't they going after people? And the presumption is that, well, look, their bosses have skin in the game when it comes to property or whatever. But actually, you wrote an article recently about a journalist who was being sued by a member of the Wagner Group, and I find that very interesting because the journalists are under pressure.
Yeah, that was Elliot Higgins who set up Bellingcat, and he was sued by Yevgeny Prigozhin here in the UK, who set up the Wagner Group, and he was sued for the crime, the supposed crime of saying that Yevgeny Prigozhin was the head of the Wagner Group. At the time when he he said these things, Yevgeny Prigozhin was under sanctions by the UK government for his role in the Wagner Group. So these are pretty, incontrovertible things. And what he was doing was taking advantage of Britain's libel laws. And frankly, it's similar. Irish libel laws are actually probably worse than British libel laws. We did have some defamation reform about 10 years ago. Costs are huge in the UK, which is our big problem. Payouts are not huge, really, generally. The cost is what's the killer. It's the cost of the legal team, the cost of fighting the case. In Ireland, the costs are huge, but also the payouts can be huge too. So there's a huge threat on journalists in Ireland. I know from speaking to Irish colleagues, and newspapers don't want their businesses. They're often run for profit, despite the public interest side of them, and they're often actually massively risk adverse, hugely risk adverse. So you end up in a context where lots of public interest stories are not told because of the threat of litigation that comes down the track. And they often know, people who are kind of rich and powerful often know that they don't even have to. They all have to do is send the letters. They don't actually have to go to court to deal with this.
Yeah. Listen, we're going to let you go, but I think journalists need more support, is what the journal.
Very much. That would be my message. Yeah, definitely.
The journal brothers here.
And new colours of shirts as well.
And new colours of shirts. Guys, lovely to see you. Sorry it's brief. Let's do it again soon.
No, brilliant. We'll have
you
on again. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you.
It was too confusing. I'm glad he left.
He's a very clever fella, Peter. I tell you, when you get into talking about these things with him, he's a fascinating character. And I would, he has, so I think it's a Substack or it's a website or something like that called Democracy for Sale. Yeah. And it's definitely worth checking out because, we like to talk about the why of things on Moth News, and he will follow the money. And he's an absolutely incredible journalist at going through the ledgers and digging up the payments and what the influence that has on democracy. And when you start to read his work, it's absolutely jaw-dropping. But, and you can never unknow what you learn from his work.
Yeah, and I just thought it was very interesting because I saw him on with James O'Brien on, is it LBC? Is that the name of the radio station? Yeah. And he was talking about this, and it struck me that we do give journalists a hard time where they're not doing their job, and they've gone missing, and what's happened to investigative journalism in Ireland, and then when he spoke about this case where, if for anybody who doesn't know, the Wagner Group, they were the mercenaries that came to help Ukraine. They were helping Russia first, and then they turned around and started attacking. They were basically whoever gave them the most money, they were going to fight for them. And then I think they turned around because they were trying to hold someone to ransom, whatever. But he wrote an article about them, and then he was being sued for saying that this guy was the leader of the Wagner Group, which the UK had recognised officially that he was. But for some reason, the UK legal system was allowing this case to go ahead, which meant that the journalist had to upfront pony up 70 grand, which is gone. So it should never have happened. And then your man just went back to fighting people, went back to war and giving interviews on television, talking about being in the leader of the Wagner Group. But that journalist lost 70 grand. Now, if I was to write an article and it cost me 70 grand, I'd think twice about writing ever again. Do you know what I mean?
It is that thing of it's not enough to be right. You have to be able to prove that you're right, and you may have to do it in front of a jury of your peers who'll be bringing in all sorts of other baggage as well. And that makes it very, very difficult, because I have been in this business for an awful long time, and I can't think of a single time when we had to go to the solicitors to get them to check a story legally where they said, do you know what, go ahead, publish that. We'll defend you in court, no problem whatsoever. That's worth doing. Never once has it happened. There has always been reviews. Can you take that out? Can you reword this? Have you 3 sources for that? Will they go on the record? Because the other thing is that when legal letters start flying around the place and when legal threats start flying around the place, all of a sudden the people who are your witnesses and your sources disappear. So what they may have told you for an article, and they may even be on film saying that, and then they just recant on the witness stand and that kind of thing. And that leaves you in an even deeper hole. So what we really need to do, and I mean, I would be somebody who would be very much pro doing this the right way, right? So if something is going to be put out in the public domain about Keith Walsh and it's detrimental to his character, his business, whatever it happens to be, you better have those things right, okay? I'm not letting anybody say anything about Keith Walsh that isn't factually correct, right? But at the same time, then, it shouldn't be prohibitively expensive. It shouldn't cost 70 grand. It shouldn't even cost 7 grand to bring these things before a court and say to a judge, do you think this is fair? And that's a big, big problem, because all it literally takes sometimes is a text message from a press officer or from an agent or from the person themselves to say, I'm going to bring you to the High Court. And that's it. You just can't do it. No outlet. That's one story on Bellingcat is 70 grand, you know, and you can imagine they might churn out, you know, several stories a week. And if that was to happen with every one of them, we wouldn't have a media at all by the end of it, you know.
But all of this is part of this idea that the wealthier people get a better crack of the whip, as it were, like in that, like, if you have the money, you can pretty much kind of do what you want, and you won't, like, journalists can't write about you, or, you know, it's people can't take you to task, or you'll have enough money to hire the best lawyers, whatever. And this is really like part of the whole moving away. And I talked to someone on one of our podcasts recently, and it was about that, the distancing between the less well off and the more wealthy in Ireland, and it's growing and growing, and what people are being paid, and you know, what people are being taxed at the higher end, and like, this is a big problem, and this is part of the whole conversation about what we're talking about Conor McGregor. The thing that Garron got himself involved in is this gap and this vacuum that's been left to allow some. And this is what happens, isn't it? This is how, like, the fascists, you know, win or get in there.
Yeah, well, I think we have a huge amount of conversations that need to be have around things like free speech and around things like the political discourse and that kind of thing. And we need to be able to have those conversations openly, and we need to be able to have them without fear. And this is what's so disappointing, really, about Garron taking his social media channels offline, because when he put up that video that we showed at just the beginning of the show there, Keith, that you played for us, he stuck in there in the comment section for a while, and, you know, agreeing with people who agreed with him, and sort of, you know, swatting away the other comments or not engaging with them whatsoever. And I think one of the things that we have to do, and again, like, this is interesting as well, because you mentioned your own experience of putting out a tweet or saying something on the radio or that kind of thing, and all of a sudden you go, shit, that wasn't what I meant, but this is how it's being interpreted, right? And there's 2 ways you can react to that. You can double down on your original thing and say, hey, I'm the victim here. I don't know anything. I'm just asking questions or that kind of thing. Or you can say, hang on a second, you have a point. Maybe I was clumsy in the way I put that. Maybe that wasn't the point I was trying to make. And I certainly don't want to be put into the same boat as these people. This is why. And that never really happened. And it is the thing. I think I saw a tweet today. Now, it was just a screenshot that somebody sent to me, so I haven't seen it in the wild myself, where Tristan Tate said that Garron Noonan did nothing wrong. Now, Tristan Tate is free to think whatever he likes, as is Garron Noonan. But if I was tweeting things or doing things that Tristan Tate, who's the brother of Andrew Tate, the 2 of them accused of rape and human trafficking in Romania, I'd be kind of wondering if I was in the right boat, if they were the kind of people that I would want to be standing side by side with. Because the other thing is that we think of free speech. We think of what Garron said on the video there. And the reason it's so important that it's him, you know, again, I have a huge amount of sympathy and empathy for him personally.
Yeah.
He has 1.7 million followers on Instagram and the same on TikTok, right? TikTok. And that's a responsibility. If you're doing that for 7 other people in Mayo, it's one thing. But 1.7 million is an awful lot. An awful lot of people around the world look at what Garron's doing online. And to them, that is Ireland. That is the voice of Ireland. Conor McGregor is the voice of Ireland because they literally don't know anything else. So with that comes responsibility. So when you say things then, in the same way that when you were presenting on Irish radio back in the day and you had an audience of hundreds of thousands every morning, you can't just say whatever you want. So if you look at free speech, we tend to think of it, Elon Musk calls himself a free speech absolutist until you disagree with him and he bans you from the platform, right? But free speech is not an absolute right. It's a qualified right. And that means that I can't come on this show on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock and say that Keith Walsh is a rapist or a paedophile or a thief or dodges his taxes or anything else like that. That's because it has to be regulated. It's the old thing of shouting fire if you find yourself in a theater or a movie theater, right? You can't do that because it will cause a stampede that may end up killing somebody, you know? And these are the reasons that we have these things.
That story was true, Philip. By the way, I just want to
about you and the taxes and that kind of thing.
The cinema thing, yeah, the fire, yeah.
Yeah, but that's it, and that's where was that you shouting fire? Was it? Yeah, probably was. Yeah. But when it comes from those things, right, we have to be very careful about what that is. Now, the other thing that we like, you know, when Garron Noonan says something, and you know, Garron Noonan has the right to say whatever he wants to those 1.7 million people. I am not going to put.
Yeah,
pardon me.
Say what you want, but there's
exactly. Exactly, but there's no freedom from consequences. And if people come back at him and tell him that they're disappointed in him and point out to him that the Tristan Tates and the Conor McGregors of this world and the Telegram channels featuring these things are actually making him out to be a hero, you can't really sort of say anything about that. Like, you know, you've made your bed in that way. And then the final leg, on the third leg, if you like, on this particular milking stool is the fact that that's how the chap made a very good living for the last couple of years. And again, I don't begrudge him that one bit, but it does take a little bit. And maybe this is also a discussion that needs to be had in Irish media and in Irish social media, that Conor McGregor himself actually once said to me, it was back in 2017 or 2018 when the Notorious documentary came out, and I sat down in my hotel in Dublin, and he'd just done the Late Late Show, and a few weeks previously he'd been at a fight. I think it was Artem Lobov was fighting for the Bellator promotion at the time. I was fighting for some other promotion anyway, and Conor was heard using a homophobic slur backstage, like just a live mic, a hot microphone caught him. And then, you know, so he went on the Late Late Show and they pre-recorded on the Late Late Show and he apologized. And then the first interview that he did after that, the first sort of print news agency interview after that he did was with me. And I remember him saying to me, that was one of the first things I brought up. I said, Conor, what do you want to say about this particular situation? This thing that, you know, do you regret what you said when that microphone was on? And he said, look, there's no handbook for the kind of fame that I have, right? There's no handbook for what's happened to me. He would have been about 28 or 29 at that point. And he'd come up through the UFC like a rocket. And he'd gone from being a fella whose girlfriend used to have to spot him the price of a cup of coffee so that he could talk to our friend Ewan McKenna in McDonald's at Newlands Cross or somewhere like that, to being a guy who was absolutely everywhere. Whereas every utterance, as it is to this day, was news, right? I said, there's no handbook for this. And that struck me last night when I was thinking about Garron Noonan, just after the chap deleted his social media accounts. I wonder, and there are people around him, okay, because we know he has an agent and he has people who manage his affairs and that kind of thing. But how much do they say to him, like, you got to be aware of these things, right? Most soccer players, athletes, you know, anybody who, you know, is in the Premier League, anybody who's in Irish rugby are notorious for it, right? They bring you in and they tell you in a public appearance or on your own social media, your job is to say absolutely nothing and get out of there as quick as possible, right? You don't want a good headline, you don't want a bad headline, you just want to get through that, you know? And you see it in managers' press conferences and you see it in post-fight press conferences and everything else like that. Most people will stay that side of the line, because if you don't and you start to offer something like that, and often it is that thing of, you know, we're just in the moment, I want to express this thing because I do, and I do think Garron has an awful lot of empathy and sympathy for people in Ireland who feel that they can't speak out. But I think what we also need to talk about, Keith, is how do we talk about these things without sort of, you know, giving fuel to the far right fire, right? So if you take Garron's own county of Mayo, 91% of the people there are white Irish citizens, basically. Many of the rest are from Lithuania, from Poland, and the UK. And there's a couple of percent are basically brown people from other parts of the world, right? So what is creating this sense of fear in Irish counties like Mayo? What is creating this sense of fear on the streets? And I think an awful lot of it has to do with the fact that, we're now using WhatsApp and TikTok and Instagram to send each other videos that young people are sort of filming of themselves fighting and attacking, the way football hooligans would have done in London back in the day. You'd have Chelsea meeting up with Millwall, that kind of thing. Now you can film those things and you can put it out online. And if you put that into your TikTok algorithm, what's the next thing that's going to get suggested to you? It's going to be some fella getting the shit kicked out of him in the car park, or it's going to be another brown lad in Walkinstown attacking a fella from Blanchardstown. And that then becomes your reality. That becomes the prism through which you see Irish society, and it is not true. Right? Yeah. I'm sick of people telling me that I live in a multicultural hellhole in Sweden. And I tell you, if you look out the window there, it's the nicest place in the world, And this is why we need to be able to talk to people about where their fear is coming from. And a lot of times now when people do talk to me about immigration, I don't talk about immigration because where you're from or the color of your skin has very little to do with who you are as a person, right? We all know working class people who are in prison. We know that there probably should be an awful lot more middle class and upper class people who should be in prison, but they're not. We all know good people and bad people in all aspects of society. And this is why we need to talk about that thing of just because you come. I reacted very strongly yesterday when you started talking about Algerians stabbing one another in City West, because I just object to the idea that you're bunting all Algerian people in City West in together. Because even in that, say there's 10 of them, there could be one that's a murderer and there could be one who'll be canonized in 100 years' time. We don't know that. And that's why it's so unfair. And that's why I try to zoom out and look at the social issues rather than where people come from.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it is the thing of if there's a criminal, it doesn't matter where they're from. Let's just take the task, right? It's like the trans issue. It's like deal with the trans person in your life that you have to deal with. That's all you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about a bigger picture, some random hotel room in New York, or some random bathroom in New York, or criminals are criminals, and that's what we need to focus on. If people break the law, if people, assault somebody, that just focus on that. It doesn't matter where they're from, and that is a big problem. You see it all the time. You talk about algorithm, like that's what you're going to get. You're going to get this, and then the person's going to be named. They're going to be like, where are they from? And this should not be happening. It's another thing we go back to with journalists and media titles as well. But the other thing is that I knew when I posted about, and I know you posted about as well, and you have a Substack as well, and you wrote very eloquently about it. It's a very good article, and people should where can people find that actually, Phil?
It's the Substack is called Arrowman in Stockholm. That was the sort of the brand I created for myself when I went freelance in 2009. So I just used that and I put my thoughts up on Substack. And very soon we will hopefully be putting these things up on Moth News, because the website is coming soon, but we keep that to ourselves for now.
Yeah, but it's very good. You should go and watch it. I knew that I'd get a reaction. But I'm doing it knowing that I'm going to get a reaction. I don't need to react to the reaction. All the reaction has been 50-50. Some agree, some don't agree. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter. That's not my business. What people think, other people's opinion, it's not none of your business. Now, the problem, I think, one of the problems with TikTok and Instagram is that there are, and I saw it today, and I told you, none of these people that were defending Garron would come on. Because it's easy to hold a phone up and say your piece and then put it down.
Yeah, that's the other thing. And again, that was one of the things where if Garron was to come on, say Garron was to come on this show, right? And again, that's why we try to do what we do. We're even with people like, myself and Ewan have fought like cat and dog for 15 years about absolutely everything. And the only time we ever didn't do it was on The Last Word with Matt Cooper, and the two of us were never invited back together again, But that to me is a healthy thing, right? And even that continued after the show that we did yesterday, which I suggest people go back and watch as well, because we discussed a lot of the immigration things that we're talking about here. But I think that's why we need, and especially here on Moth News, we need to create a place that is compassionate, right? Because I've disagreed with Al about these things, I've disagreed with his wife about these things, and with the whole team, I've disagreed with you about these things. But we need to be able to have these discussions so that we can find a way forward. Because the other thing that sticks out to me, Keith, is all of this time we are talking about Garron and Conor McGregor today, we're not talking about Micheál Martin. We're not talking about housing. We're not talking about health. We're not talking about education. We're not talking about the lack of railways in the west of Ireland and Sligo in the northwest and that kind of thing. These are all things. So not only are we sort of, when we talk about these far right talking points, and when we allow ourselves to be consumed by the issue of immigration, for example, we're not just, doing their work for them. We're also doing the work of the government, because people aren't looking at what they're, in most cases, not doing about things. And that really is giving them a free pass. I thought this time last year, just coming up to the local elections and that, I I thought that there was so much time spent discussing these things and Sinn Féin being weak on immigration and that kind of thing. And I'd say Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were sitting there rubbing their hands because the media and voters in general and social media were doing the work. They just had to sit back and let all this happen. And of course, Sinn Féin suffered in the polls because of it. So it is definitely something that, we need to ask why these distractions are being put out there, because it does suit the parties in power. Because, if they could just go, okay, blame them brown folks over there or blame those Ukrainian people down there or that, and then it's just an easy thing. Could I make one more point? Actually, just struck me last night when we were talking.
I have Gareth waiting, but yeah, go ahead. One more point.
Yeah, very quickly. So one thing was that, Ewan was making the point yesterday about we don't have the capacity for these things. But if we're going to bring refugees into a town in, say, Mayo, for instance, right, we don't have the capacity for that. Well, then we don't have the capacity for anybody. Okay, we don't have the capacity for people to move down from Dublin or from Kerry or anywhere else, which just illustrates the point that I was trying to make, that these things aren't down to the people themselves per se or where they come from. It's structural underdimensioning of Irish services.
Gareth, you can. Thank you very much for being so.
Hello,
patient, Gareth.
How are you, Gareth?
Gareth Stackley.
Yeah.
You guys know each other, Philip? Gareth, Philip.
No, but we do now. Another handsome man with a beard on the show. That's exactly what we need.
I feel like there's not enough men on this show. And how do you solve problems? Give a bunch of men a microphone. Gareth, you're a filmmaker, and you are, but also you have a degree in psychology, am I right? And an interest in the brain and the people and all that kind of stuff. Human watching, people watching. And you made a video yesterday, which I thought was really good in the way you described the issue with what Garron had posted, Garron Noonan. It just explained this idea of anchoring.
Yeah. So first of all, can you guys hear me okay?
You sound absolutely beautiful.
Wonderful. Yeah, the whole thing is very weird. I'm not really a TikTok user. I made an account, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. I put up this video just reacting as one does to Garron Noonan, and it has now, I think it's about 340,000 views, which is really disturbing.
Scary.
Kept me awake last night. I felt like Garron must be feeling himself with, trying to deal with the torrent of reaction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, basically I just outlined sort of exactly what you guys have been talking about, just maybe in slightly more technical terms, how, as Phil said, you see something on your screen, and we've evolved essentially to assume that a thing that we see is relevant to our environment. If you see a tiger, we didn't evolve with smartphones or televisions, so it's something which we consider a threat possibly, or a reward possibly.
Yeah.
But now we're surrounded by images and we've habituated to it to some extent. But at the end of the day, the same mechanisms are there that we would have, used in the what psychologists call the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. That millions of years ago would have triggered us to react. So when you see a teenager from a refugee background attacking someone, not only does the algorithm push you to see more things like that, because it's a highly exciting stimulus and there's endless stuff written about that, but also you misrepresent how common it is, because we're just really, really bad at going, this is one data point that's not representative. Just as humans, we just can't do that. We can't think in those terms. So I suppose I talked a little bit about anchoring, which is this, people probably have heard about it in the context of cognitive psychology. So like Kahneman and Tversky, Kahneman won the Nobel Prize some years ago for coming up with behavioral economics.
You're giving us too much credit here, Gary. nodding, I'm lost. Don't presume anything.
Okay. Well, it's an old idea. It basically goes back to the 60s, and it's a really fun story. This psychologist, Sergei Moscovici, was looking at how the French reacted to when psychoanalysis came to France, and how they understood this new thing of getting psychoanalyzed. And one of his findings, he looked at different classes, and how the literati and the common man and stuff talked about this. But one of his findings was that people understood it in terms of the confessional. And I'd imagine a very similar thing happened in Ireland, because they were used to going in and, the little curtain opening and telling their sins. And they used language and ways of thinking about it, which were very similar. So that's kind of the origin of the idea of an anchor as a thing that you use to connect what you already understand to this new phenomena. And then it's gone on in more recent years to be used in cognitive psychology as a way of understanding how an existing number or word can fix you. So, for example, if you go onto HelloFresh or competing food delivery services And there's 3 options usually, 3 to 5, right? So there's one that's wildly expensive, one that's really cheap but doesn't give you very much, maybe like Netflix with ads or whatever. And then there's one that seems reasonable. And the reason it seems reasonable is because you then are immediately anchored by those other 2 figures. But what's interesting to me about anchoring is that even though we've got this modern kind of reductive idea of it, the old idea, this kind of earlier idea, is all rooted in how we as a society make meaning. It comes out of this theory that this guy Muscovici had, social representations theory, about how we decide what things mean as a community and how language changes over time to mean new things. But there's this kind of battle in the use of words, and people have studied this in the context, say, of Serbia during and after the Yugoslav war, where they found that a Serbian journalist would go and find a term in American military publications, and then that would be misinterpreted, and there'll be a kind of telephone what used to
whispers kind of.
What used to be, I was going to say, what used to be called Chinese whispers, was it politically incorrect to say that? But it would be misunderstood systematically.
And apologize to all our Chinese listeners.
Yeah. And eventually, 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 iterations down the road, a term that, say neocortical warfare, that some analyst kind of doffed his fedora and wrote down in some obscure military document talking about information warfare, became something that people believed was a weapon that the Americans were lasering their brains with. So this is the kind of, what I was trying to say in relation to Garron was basically exactly as you said, Phil, just that 2 things. One, that his perception of reality, I mean, he says in the video that, Ireland is more dangerous, and only someone who hasn't gone outside their house could deny that.
If you don't believe that, you need to leave your house more, which I leave my house all the time. I wander, I walk a lot, I get Lewis's, I get trains, I don't see it. Go on.
Yeah, it's simply, it's not true. It's not statistically true, and it's not observation true. But you can see how one could get that impression if you happen to see a lot of violence incidents, if you happen to be the victim of something, if someone happens to experience something, it has this unrealistic kind of level of significance to you. It's not representative, but it's important to you. It happened in your life, yeah. Or you see it online and it has the same effect, even though it's not true. And so it's sort of this strange thing. And he then, in saying that, he then takes part in that process where he normalizes the discussion. And this is what really got to me, is that he wasn't saying anything too crazy or too offensive, but what he was doing was, shifting the Overton window that little bit, so that all those people, the Conor McGregors of this world, who have a very specific agenda, which is, authoritarianism, which is deport all the migrants, which is camps, and all where that goes, that those people could go, we get you, Garron, you're on our side. And all the comments that I got on my video inclined me to think that I was right in that assessment, that that's how people took it, and that his lending his kindly, sweet-natured, affable personality to something just that little bit outside the Overton window shifted it enough that the edges become even more sinister. And that's, I guess, where I was going with it. So
yeah, and I really liked your story about the seagull and the crow. It's a good analogy, because it really sort of, for me, I like looking at books that have pictures in them. You know what I mean? So you painted the picture.
Well, it was, I'm not going to lie, it was condescending, but I thought that his narrative was so sort of childish that it had to be dealt with on those terms. And I also was quite honestly, I don't know where the bars are. I know you can't say stuff like sexual assault on TikTok. So I didn't know, can I say, the names of races, or will that be taken out of context if I do and recut up?
But
so I made the silly
the seagull thing was right. Is if somebody decides that seagulls are good and crows are bad, and then they just keep showing videos of crows doing bad things, and to prove a point, that's what's happening. It just really clarified it for me. Maybe you could.
It's very interesting.
So what's that?
Sorry to interrupt there, lads. I was just thinking about how things have developed. I was saying before you came on there, guys, I've been living in Scandinavia for almost 26 years now, and I spent a lot of time writing and studying how the far right here has grown from 1% of the polls to the Sweden Democrats being the second biggest political party in the country at the moment. And one of the shifts that they made, and they started to make it around about the mid-1990s, just before I moved here, was they stopped talking about race and started talking about culture. Right, so nobody brings up the color of anybody's skin anymore, but it's all to do with where they're from and their culture. And culture is equally, basically, what they're talking about is Islam, and that was where that started, and it just grew and grew and grew. And this is kind of, for me, I'm kind of sitting back. There's that great Native American saying, if you sit long enough by the river, eventually all your enemies will float by. And I'm kind of sitting watching Ireland now. I've often thought that Ireland is a good 10 or 15 years behind Scandinavia in terms of how that developed, and now I'm seeing exactly the same thing happen in real time. in Ireland. And I'm not one bit surprised with Garron because, you know, Swedish comedians and Swedish actors and actresses and singers and everything, they did exactly the same thing. Sort of, you know, coming innocently into this minefield and go, whoa, and then all of a sudden, but their reaction, and this is one thing I'd love to get your take on before we finish, is, do you think, you know, what's the risk now that Garron goes, okay, everybody hates me, so I'm just going to throw in my lot with all these people because I didn't do anything wrong? You know, is that a risk? Or is he the kind of person, you know, from what you've seen on social media, that, you know, is going to go, oh, I didn't mean that at all? You know, is he going to disappear completely?
Well, I'm no expert on Garron Noonan or his state of mental health. I hope he's okay, because I understand the pressure that he's under, just in general, speaking to an audience of that size. And I actually made a second video today, which was held back for review for hours and only just went up, where I kind of say this. And I don't think he's being cancelled. I don't think he should be cancelled. But I think his reaction is one of someone who's obviously hurt and afraid. I doubt that he'll become some kind of hard right person. I obviously that's happened with people who've been cancelled, but I think those tend to be people who there were serious sexual allegations of sexual misconduct or violence or both against them, and they disappeared for a while, and then they, like Russell Brand would be the classic example, you know, or Kevin Spacey or any of these characters. And
only kind of these things, they're trying to take me down. That's the
exactly. Well, there's always that conversion narrative, and the right now are really enmeshed in conservative Christianity and radical redemption stuff. So there's that arc of like, you've been reborn, you're not the crazy lefty anymore, now we'll take you on, and those allegations were just a conspiracy, and they'll give you that. They'll say that never happened. I don't think Garron has been accused of anything like that. You know, he's getting some criticism, and bless him, like, he's obviously sensitive to it, and I think that speaks well to him that he is sensitive to it. I don't think he's going to become some kind of hard right loon. He probably will avoid talking about stuff like this in the future. But I hope he comes back anyway, because I find his videos incredibly entertaining. I think he's funny. I think it's lovely to see someone with his accent, which I've never heard before, talking, and he uses it so well. You know, his prosody is so great. He's a brilliantly natural actor and obviously singer. I think he's a really talented guy, and I think he maybe weighed into something that was, you know, he wasn't ready to engage with. And I honestly can understand why. If you're making videos day in, day out, how are you going to bite your tongue when stuff happens and you're being asked your opinion on it? Like, it's going to be so hard. It's going to be so difficult.
It's so hard.
The sensation.
And that's the thing. Like, he's had so much love from the Irish people, and like, he's got like I've had friends in, you know, across the water or whatever, sending me stuff going, do you follow this guy? He's hilarious, you know. So he's a global audience, and I know he's touring around the world, and he's got gigs coming up with MCD in Dublin and stuff like that. So he's got lots going for him, and he's much loved. And I think this is a really harsh lesson for him. Like, I really do. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, like, it's happened to me where, you know, I kind of had it was mostly the kind of right wing having. I've done a few things. I'm not gonna lie, you know. I shouted fire in a cinema, a few, but. And I've been through it, you know, and it's hard. It's really hard. But the really good stuff with social media and being on social media and the rewards and all that kind of stuff, and how people love you, that you cannot take that too seriously, as much as this will pass. And I don't know if you young kids, Gareth, say this anymore, but, you know, today is newspaper, tomorrow's chip paper. Do you know what I mean? That's that idea that, like, this will be gone. It's great. It's a great bit of content for us to talk about. It's important that we talk about it. It will pass, and he's done the right thing, as you said earlier. Like, it would have been great to have him just still chatting about it, but he possibly wasn't in the right frame of mind. Didn't expect it. It was a bit of a sort of like, oh my God, he's probably in a bit of a shock now, and needs to sort of gather his thoughts, which is a good thing, because he's not like trying to, you know, he's not digging a bigger hole, or he's not doubling down, which is good. He's stepping away. He's having to think about it. He'll come back and make a statement, and he'll carry on, I hope. But what I would say to someone like Garron is, it's okay. It's okay. This too will pass. It's not that, like, things aren't that serious, as in, like, it's just life. It is what it is. Just it's fine. What you're saying is serious, and we do need to discuss this. And it's a great opportunity for us to discuss it as well. And I do know where he's coming from, because people will watch this and go, well, there's three lads there. You know, they'll presume you're a D4 head, Philip, as well. And they'll say, what do you guys know? You're all from Malahide, and and you've got silver spoons in your mouth, and you don't know what it's like to be, you know, working class.
Pardon.
People,
proud Northsider. This slander cannot be stood for at all here. There
is a bit.
I was born in the Rotunda myself, so I deny any and all allegations.
Rotunda, it's big turkey, small child.
Turkey in my case.
So you can see where people come, but that's the problem. Is that now, and I was saying to Philip, is that now that video has been used as, you see, this guy who you all think is hilarious and is really popular and is really funny and is a really good guy agrees, and that proves our point, isn't that? That's it, Gareth, isn't it? Or Philip, whoever.
But you know what the
I
best
think
thing
I
is?
think he's in.
Well, come in at both at the same time. I'll count you in.
Just very quickly, because I have
Yeah.
to split
Yeah,
the
Philip
fierce
is
here.
hard out. Okay.
The best thing is the fickle nature of social media is absolutely brilliant, because somebody is going to, you know, again, it's that old thing. It's like every day there's a main character on Twitter, and the goal is never be it. And Keith has been it on occasion. I've been on it. Gareth, your time may be coming. Who knows? You know,
He is
but
he is today, I think, actually.
yeah, exactly. We're actually going to clip this up and just make you look like a complete idiot and put it out there, then, you know. But I think that's the thing, and I do think that we have to come back and have that compassionate view of Garron, because I do think that the man got himself into something that he just really didn't know how to get out of, you know.
Yeah.
But this too, as you say, Keith, will pass. Somebody else will be in the firing line. Probably Conor McGregor. Let's face it, he's going to come out with something else, you know. If not now, but in 12 days when his ultimatum to the Irish government is up.
Philip, I'm going to let you go, but next time you appear on Moth as another person, just like at least try and wear different, you know, different clothes or something. You know, we're not going to pay you double the fee. Do you know what I mean? Like, look, I let you go.
Look, Peter had to rent a shirt off me. That's all I'll say in the matter. Thanks.
Gareth, I'll let you go as well. And so you literally opened up this TikTok account. I saw that you posted. I was going, what is this account? Is it a real account? Because I probably saw it before it really took off. But you literally posted this video. It was really good, and you explained it really well. But like hundreds of thousands, you're like, just like the guy goes, God, I remember being on radio for a year and winning a radio award and going, this is easy. I never won those things. But you must be thinking TikTok is easy.
No, quite the opposite. It's like I said, it's not even my primary account. I have another account that I set up first, you know, like 4 weeks ago, which I'm posting poems and stories and stuff on, and all those videos have like 400 views. So I don't think it's easy. I think it's easy to react to things, especially in a heated way, and for that to take off. But like, and he must be asking himself this too: is that how you want to spend your life? You know, do you want to be part of the commentariat, especially in that kind of way on TikTok? In a like, it's one thing to talk on a podcast for an hour substantively and interview people, but it's a lot easier to go on and you can splice anybody and react to it and talk for 5 minutes. And I think if they have a big audience, you're going to get one too. And I sort of knew that, and it's like that's kind of it's not necessarily a healthy thing either, that you can do that. It's not necessarily a healthy road to go down. So
yeah. How did you feel? How did it feel though? Like just that, the dopamine of like, oh my God, like there must have been a moment where you're like, oh my God.
Honestly, horrible.
Yes.
Honestly, not good at all.
It is horrible.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I'm being
I
told.
don't know why. It's like if you're begging and someone just throws a bucket of money on top of you, and then you're like, people are going to run over and grab this off me and beat me up,
bad thing,
and I don't
yeah.
know where to put this.
Yeah.
You know, that's a silly analogy, but
No, I know
felt
exactly
like
what
I
you're
didn't
saying.
think
Yeah,
for it to happen that way. You know.
So we're going to basically clip this up and go, Garrett Stack hates beggars. You'll be internet sensation tomorrow.
I might be one myself soon, so I hope I don't hate them too much.
Well, look, we're all only, hopefully in Ireland, if we go the same way as America, we'll be at some stage only one paycheck away from homelessness. Garrett, that's deeper. That's upset me now. Gareth, I'll let you go. Thanks very much, and best of luck.
Thank you very much. Take care.
And that was, enjoyed your TikTok, your one TikTok. Good luck. I suppose I'll just end on this briefly. Garron, I'm sure you won't watch this, or I'm sure you're having a day off and taking things easy. I'll just reiterate that it's unfortunate that it's you, but it is a conversation that we want to have, and it's a conversation that people want to have, and it's unfortunate that it's such a divisive issue. But it's such an important conversation. It's kind of good in a way that you said what you said. It's going to be such a bad thing for you for 24, maybe 48 hours. It was good that you said it. I mean, you just maybe hadn't thought it through properly, or as I said, I've done it. I've said stupid things, and I'm not proud of it. But it's going to be okay. And in a way, things like this. Difficult things aren't to be avoided in life. They're to be just learned from. And it's not the end of the world. It's an obstacle. And some obstacles are bigger than others. And we just get over them. And then we go, okay, well, that was an obstacle. How did I get around that? And you've got to go through it, because you can't go around it. And once you get through it, you go, okay, I learned something from that. And that's the most important thing. That is life. The obstacles turn up. You go through them. You find a way through them. You get to the other side. You carry on. That is life, and it's give yourself the tools to get through those obstacles. That's it. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other. That's it from Moth News. If you have any stories that you'd like to share with us or anything you'd like us to look into, Philip is like he's a sleuth. He's always out there, trench coat, hat with a little press ticket in it, looking for stories. So send us in stories if you want to get in touch. If you have any comments on any of the stuff we spoke about, you can follow us on our social media. Moth News. You can find us we're on X and Instagram. But don't reshare our stuff too much. We don't really want to be internet sensations. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for our guests. And we will see you back here live next Friday, 3 o'clock as always. But do follow us because we do the ad hoc stuff during the week as well. Have a great day.